I got pregnant at 19, and my parents disowned me. Because I didn't terminate the baby, but when they discovered that my baby's father was rich, they tried to come crawling back, but my now husband and I cut them off for good. When I was 19, I thought I had it all figured out. I was halfway through my sophomore year in college, majoring in graphic design, and had just started dating this guy, Caleb. He was charming in that casual, easy way, drove a BMW, wore a Rolex without bragging about it, and paid for our dates without blinking. I had no clue who his family was at the time, just that he had money and seemed to treat me better than anyone ever had. Then I got pregnant. The day I found out, I sat on the cold tile of my bathroom floor for 3 hours, holding that tiny white stick in trembling hands. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in stunned silence while the world around me shifted entirely. When I told my parents, it was like I'd confessed to murder. My mom screamed. My dad went pale, and then red, like he couldn't decide whether to faint or explode. They accused me of being reckless, of throwing my life away. My mother cried about how I was ruining the family name, as if we were some kind of royalty instead of a middle-class suburban household with a mortgage and 2 leased SUVs. And then my dad said the words that would change everything. If you keep this baby, you're not our daughter anymore. Just like that. No discussion. No support. Just a door slammed in my face. I slept in my car for 2 nights before Caleb found out. He was furious, not at me, but at them. He offered to get me a place immediately. Don't worry about school, he said. You can go back later. Let's take care of you and the baby first. He didn't even hesitate. 3 months later, I was living in a luxury condo with a walk-in closet and a view of the city skyline. Caleb's family had money, serious money. His father was a real estate mogul, the kind you see on Forbes lists. And suddenly, I wasn't just a pregnant college dropout. I was the soon-to-be mother of their first grandchild. And that's when my parents came crawling back. She hadn't spoken to me in 4 months. Not when I called crying from the doctor's office. Not when I needed help finding a new OB. Not when I was too nauseous to cook and lived on crackers for days. But now? Now that they'd seen the photos of the condo, the Mercedes SUV Caleb got me just to be safe, and the ring he put on my finger because yes, he proposed after our second ultrasound. Now, they wanted to talk. I didn't answer. 2 days later, a card came in the mail, no return address. Inside was a long letter from my dad, written in a stiff, precise handwriting. It was never about you, it was about fear. We didn't know how to handle it, but we love you, and we want to be there for you and our grandchild. Please let us back in. I tore it up. I didn't know if it was pregnancy hormones or just finally seeing the truth of who my parents were, but I was furious. For 19 years, I played the obedient daughter, got the grades, did the church thing, wore the dresses they picked for family photos. I smiled through their judgment, their rules, their obsession with appearances. I made myself small to fit inside their expectations. And the moment I stepped outside their bubble, the moment I needed them most, they cut me off without blinking. Now that I was living a life they approved of, money, marriage, status, they wanted to pretend it never happened. They didn't want me. They wanted the image of me. Caleb told me not to stress. Let them rot in their own guilt, he said. We'll build our own family. But it wasn't that simple. Because deep down, I still wanted to know, was I being cruel? Or was I finally standing up for myself? I didn't respond to their letters, their emails, or the texts that slowly started trickling in from random relatives. My Aunt Lisa, who never even remembered my birthday. My cousin Mallory, who once told me I'd be pretty if I lost 10 pounds. Suddenly, they were all worried about me. I knew what was really going on. My parents had started talking. Bragging, even. Word must have spread. She's doing great now. Her fiancé is from a very respectable family. Oh yes, they'll be well taken care of. It wasn't love or guilt pulling them back to me. It was pride, reputation, the shiny allure of proximity to wealth. Caleb could see it clearer than I could. You don't owe them a single conversation, he said as he rubbed my feet one night on the couch. They made their choice. Now, they can live with it. Still, something inside me ached. I remembered being 15, crying in my room after a breakup, and my mom bringing me hot cocoa. I remembered my dad sneaking me McDonald's fries after my braces got tightened and my mouth hurt too much for dinner. Those moments weren't all fake. They were real. But I was starting to wonder if that made it better or worse. When I went into labor early, at 36 weeks, I didn't think about my mom. I didn't wonder if she'd be in the waiting room. I had Caleb holding my hand, whispering, "You've got this," while I screamed through every contraction. I had nurses. I had doctors. I had him. And when our son, Luca, was finally born, screaming and pink and impossibly beautiful, I felt a tidal wave of love crash over me so hard it left me breathless. Caleb cried. I cried. We were a family. And for a while, that was enough. Until my mom showed up at the hospital. Uninvited. Unannounced. Holding a gift bag with a stuffed lamb inside, and the most uncomfortable smile I've ever seen. I stared at her like she was a ghost. My mom, standing in the doorway of my hospital room, in her pearls and cashmere cardigan like she was headed to brunch, not like she was visiting the daughter she disowned. Caleb stood up fast. Protective. Tense. How did you even know where we were? She looked between us, her lips twitching into something that was maybe meant to be a smile. Lisa told me. She heard from Mallory, who follows you on Instagram. So that's how deep the stalking went. They'd turned my cousin into a damn spy. My mom took a step forward. I had to see you. And the baby.
She paused.
He's beautiful, sweetheart. I should have screamed, thrown her out, ripped that gift bag to shreds. But I was too stunned.
Exhausted.
Still bleeding, still dazed, still reeling from the weight of becoming a mother less than 24 hours earlier. Caleb moved in front of her. You need to leave. Now. But I held out my hand. Wait. He looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe I was.
But I needed to hear her say it.
I needed to know if there was any real love left in her. Why now? I asked, voice hoarse. Why show up after everything? She blinked fast. Because I made a mistake. I raised an eyebrow. A mistake? You abandoned me. She looked down. I know. And I can't fix that. But I want to be part of your life again. I want to meet my grandson. I want to make it right. There was a pause, one of those long, uncomfortable silences that stretch and stretch until they feel like they're going to snap. I'm not the same girl you threw out, I finally said. And you don't get to walk back in just because you regret it now. Tears welled in her eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were real or just part of the performance. I just want a chance, she whispered. Caleb gently squeezed my hand. I could feel his tension, his worry. And I told her the truth. You'll never meet him, not unless I believe you actually deserve to. Summer slipped into fall, and the air turned cool, crisp, and quieter. It had been nearly 6 months since I'd given birth, and in that time, I transformed. Not just physically, but emotionally. I no longer second-guessed every decision or shrank beneath old memories. My spine straightened. My voice steadied. I was a mother now, unapologetically, still. Reminders of my past found ways to creep in. The grocery store. I bumped into a woman from my parents' church. She looked me up and down with a tight smile and commented on how grown up I looked now. Your mom always talks about the baby, she added lightly, like that was a normal thing to say to someone whose parents had banished her months before, that I said nothing and walked away. That woman didn't know my story, just the version my parents had rewritten for the community. The shiny narrative where they were loving, supportive, and present. Where my success was a shared triumph, not a rebellion. They never told anyone about the night I slept in my car. About the voicemail my dad left saying, "You made your bed, now lie in it." They only started caring when the linens looked expensive. A few weeks later, a card arrived in the mail. Handwritten again, this time for my dad. Inside was a check for $10,000. No note, no explanation. Just the money, as if that alone could fill in the crater they left behind. As if they thought this was a transaction, that they could buy their way into Luca's life, that I didn't cash it. I didn't tear it up either. I left it in a drawer, where it could sit silently, a paper-thin monument to everything that was broken between us. Caleb never pushed. He supported my decisions without interference, though I knew he harbored anger of his own. He didn't have perfect parents either, but he couldn't fathom the cruelty mine had shown. He saw my strength, even when I doubted it, and that gave me the courage to draw a line that I refused to let anyone cross, not even blood. We built a home out of love and safety. By Luca's first birthday, our lives had settled into something that almost felt ordinary. Caleb and I had moved into a house in the hills, modern, sun-filled, with a backyard big enough for a sandbox and tiny shoes to scatter across. I started working again, freelance design projects during Luca's naps or after bedtime. Life was full, chaotic, and sweet. The party was small. A few of Caleb's close friends, their partners, and a couple of neighbors we'd come to know. I baked a lopsided cake shaped like a teddy bear, and Caleb grilled burgers in the backyard. We sang off-key, blew bubbles, and snapped too many photos. For once, I didn't miss the idea of family because I was surrounded by people who chose to be there, not out of obligation but out of love. A few days later, I got another letter. This time it was a photo. An old one. I was 6, missing a front tooth, smiling up at my dad while holding a sparkler in one hand. It was the 4th of July. I remembered that night, barefoot on the lawn, mosquito bites on my legs, the way he lifted me onto his shoulders to see the fireworks. On the back, in faded ink, were 5 words. I miss her every day.
No signature. No demands. Just that. It haunted me.
Because I knew what he was doing. He was trying to reach the little girl inside me, the one who had idolized him, who believed he hung the moon. The one who cried the night he told her she was no longer welcome in his house. That girl still lived inside me. But she was no longer in control. I burned the photo. Not out of hate, but necessity. It was time to let go of the illusion that they could ever return to my life without reckoning for the damage they caused. Grief isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a slow, silent severing, a quiet goodbye to people who are still alive. The truth is, I hadn't just lost my parents. I had buried the version of me that needed their approval to survive. And in her place, someone stronger had taken root. As the months passed, the silence from my parents turned from loud to hollow. The desperate texts became occasional check-ins. The letters stopped altogether. It was as if they had finally realized I wasn't playing a game. I wasn't punishing them. I was protecting myself, and more importantly, protecting Luca. The distance gave me room to breathe, to examine my childhood with new eyes. It was like peeling wallpaper and finding mold beneath what I once thought was normal, even loving, now looked brittle, conditional. My parents had loved me in the same way they loved furniture, so long as I looked right, stayed clean, didn't embarrass them in front of company. When I deviated from the life they curated for me, they discarded me like a broken chair, but motherhood had cracked me open. I looked at Luca, his curious eyes and messy curls, and couldn't imagine placing expectations on him that hinged on his obedience. I wanted him to feel safe making mistakes. I wanted his life to be wide, not narrow. Loud, not polite. His existence deserved celebration, not control. Caleb and I thrived in the little world we built. We had hard days, of course, sleepless nights, blowout diapers, teething meltdowns, but we had each other. And we were learning. I wasn't just healing from what my parents did. I was unlearning everything they taught me about love. IT wasn't transactional. It wasn't about perfection. That IT was about showing up. Every day, late one evening, after Luca finally fell asleep, I found myself standing in his room longer than usual. The nightlight painted soft stars on the ceiling, and I watched him breathe, slow and steady. My throat tightened. I whispered a promise. Not for show, not for anyone to hear, just for me. I'll never make you feel small to keep myself comfortable, because that's what my parents had done. They demanded I shrink, and when I didn't, they cut me out, but I would never repeat that cycle. Not with my son. Not in this life. Especially. Caleb and I had always talked about marriage like it was a certainty, not a question. There was no grand proposal this time. He had already given me a ring months ago, back when everything felt like a free-fall. But now, as our lives had grown roots and steadied, the idea of making it official felt right. Not for show, not to impress anyone, just for us. We planned a small ceremony, intimate and simple. A sun-drenched garden behind an art gallery we both loved, with ivy-covered brick and wildflowers everywhere. Luca would be there, dressed in a tiny bow tie. I had my dress custom made, nothing extravagant, just something that felt like me.
Soft. Real. Unapologetically mine.
The guest list was short. Friends who had become family. Caleb's parents, who had embraced me without hesitation, even after learning the whole story. A few coworkers I'd grown close to over the past year. People who had shown up, who loved us without conditions. My parents' names were never considered. Not even for a second. There was no dramatic confrontation, no tearful call begging for an invitation. Just silence. They knew. Maybe they'd finally accepted that there are some things you don't get to be part of after abandonment. Maybe they still believed one day I'd soften. That weddings have a way of healing old wounds. But this wasn't their story to mend. The morning of the wedding, as I sipped coffee on the porch with Luca in my lap, I felt calm. No jitters, no cold feet.
Just peace.
I wasn't walking into this marriage to fix my past. I was walking into it because I had a partner who saw all of me and loved me anyway. When I walked down the aisle holding Luca's tiny hand, I didn't mourn who wasn't there. I didn't need my father to give me away, because I had already given myself permission to live freely. Caleb's eyes met mine at the altar, and everything else fell away. This wasn't the life my parents wanted for me. It was better. After the wedding, everything felt different, not because a piece of paper changed us, but because we had declared ourselves a family in front of the people who mattered. There was something powerful in saying, this is who we are, and this is enough.
No apologies. No explanations.
Just truth. Caleb's parents surprised us with a week-long stay at a private villa in Italy as a honeymoon gift. It was the first time we'd been away from Luca overnight, and while I missed him with every fiber of my being, I also realized how much I needed the pause. The quiet mornings sipping espresso, the lazy strolls through cobblestone alleys, the warmth of Caleb's hand in mine under the Tuscan sun, it all reminded me that I was still me. Not just a mother, not just a survivor, but a woman building a new chapter. When we returned home, Luca ran into my arms, chattering in toddler speak and clinging to my neck like I'd been gone a lifetime. We were back in our routine again, but it felt stronger, more grounded. A few weeks later, I got a message from my Aunt Lisa. Your parents found out about the wedding. They're heartbroken.
I didn't respond.
What was there to say? They weren't uninvited. They were never invited. That wasn't a punishment. It was a boundary. One they had earned through every cruel word, every silence when I needed them, every attempt to erase their betrayal with shallow gestures. I no longer carried the guilt they tried to plant inside me. Their heartbreak was theirs to bear. Mine had already been endured and healed. Caleb never asked me to forgive them. He didn't push me to mend things or offer half-hearted wisdom about family ties. He only reminded me that love is what you build, not what you inherit. And we were building something real. One night, while rocking Luca to sleep, I realized something that made tears sting my eyes. This little boy would never know what it felt like to be unwanted. Because we had broken the cycle for him. As Luca grew, so did I. With every milestone, his first steps, his first words, the first time he called me mama with purpose, I felt myself peeling further and further away from the shadow of who I used to be. The girl who once begged her parents to love her unconditionally was gone. In her place stood a woman who had built a life with her own two hands. I still heard about my parents from time to time. Mutual acquaintances. A distant cousin who sent a Christmas card out of habit. Whispers that my father's health wasn't what it used to be. That my mother had taken to therapy. I didn't know if it was true, or just gossip. I didn't ask. I wasn't angry anymore. But I also wasn't interested. That's something no one tells you. That peace and distance can coexist. That you can grieve people, and also move on without ever letting them back in. That love can exist in your memory without granting someone access to your present. Luca was 3 when he asked why he didn't have other grandparents. We were sitting in the backyard, painting rocks with glitter and toddler-sized paintbrushes. I hesitated, but only for a moment. I told him the truth, in a version that made sense to his gentle, growing heart. Some people don't know how to love safely, I said. so we love them from far away. He accepted it with the same quiet wisdom that often surprised me in someone so small. Then he went back to painting his rock, bright blue with gold dots. No tears. No confusion, just trust. Later that evening, I sat beside Caleb on the couch, Luca asleep upstairs, and told him about the conversation. He wrapped an arm around me and kissed my temple. You handled it perfectly, he said. You always do. There were still moments where echoes of my past tugged at me, a family at the park, an old photo that resurfaced, a stranger who looked too much like my mother from behind. But they didn't sting like they used to. They reminded me of how far I'd come, not just out of survival, but into freedom. Now, years later, I sit in the quiet of our home, watching Luca play with his toy cars on the living room floor. His laughter fills the space, a sound so pure it makes my chest ache with gratitude. I've learned that family isn't always defined by blood or history. It's the people who choose to stand beside you when it counts, who lift you up instead of tearing you down. My parents are a distant chapter, a memory I've made peace with but never forgotten. They didn't show up when I needed them most. They rejected me at my most vulnerable. And though they tried to come back when it suited their image, I wasn't the same girl who once begged for their love and approval. I am stronger now. I am whole. Caleb and I have built something real, a life filled with laughter, love, and hard-earned trust. Luca will grow up knowing he is cherished beyond measure, that his worth isn't tied to anyone else's acceptance or approval. Sometimes I wonder if my parents think about what they lost, if they ever regret their choices beyond the surface apologies and checkbooks. But those thoughts don't haunt me anymore. They belong to them, not me, because I've reclaimed my story. I'm not defined by the door they slammed shut. I'm defined by the family I chose to open my heart to. And that, more than anything else, is my victory.